Yeah, there it goes.
Oh, you got it? Yeah, okay. Good. All right, let's get into that first. Okay, cool. All right, let me just close this. Yeah, so hi guys. Welcome to Gen AI in Fintech Meetups. I think it's the seventh virtual event tonight. Time goes so quickly. Tonight's topic is about unlocking generative AI in a APRA or APRA regulated environment. Before we kick off, I just want to quickly start with the acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting here today. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and I also extend that respects to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. My name is Kurt Young, the founder of this Gen AI in FinTech Meetup, and also your host for this evening. I'm a digital banking product manager at a FinTech company called Sandstone Technology. We provide digital banking, digital lending SaaS solutions to more than 30 banks globally. But personally speaking, I'm super passionate about Gen AI's application in the FinTech industry, hence why I'm creating this meetup. I also super passionate about lean product management. So that's why I provide a bit of ad hoc consulting services to startups and also a bit of a product coaching to individuals around lean product management. If you want to know more, feel free to check out my website, kurtyoung.com. Bit of a housekeeping before I introduce our guest speaker Ben tonight. Please feel free to raise your questions in the chat section. Which will be addressing them after the presentation and demo. And also, while either Ben or myself is speaking or going through the presentation, mute yourself. Feel free to ask questions if Ben do say you can. Ask questions. And also the session is being recorded as we can see right now. Just let me know if you have a problem with that now. Otherwise, we'll keep going. So without much further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Ben Hogan. Ben has been at the forefront of software development, pioneering new methodologies in product development, strategy formulation, cloud computing, and AI. He has been a consultant, trainer, advisor, and a senior leader at prominent firms throughout Australia and globally. A bit of a story on how I got to know Ben. That was years ago. I used to work at a ad tech company or a SaaS company called Central Education. Ben was the sort of a consultant helping us on the agile transformation journey. So he has done an amazing job helping the organization, and we're actually helping me at the time as well when I was doing product management work. So me and Ben would become friends, and being kept in touch ever since. Ben has a knack for making complex technological concepts practical for business applications, and also he led significant changes across industries, implementing, for tonight's topic, generative AI, and also previously OKRs, product discovery, agile practices, not only just within the IT, but also in the sales, marketing, and other fields as well. So if you guys have questions, not just on Gen AI stuff, but around implementing OKRs, product discovery, agile practices, Ben is also the go-to guy for that. So he's currently helping financial services clients and also the major brands adopting Gen AI, from executive code education to initial proof of concept and also beyond. Ben makes AI more human at a consulting company called a New 21. I'll let Ben probably going to introduce or actually talking more about that a bit later on. And he's also the founder of Freshwater Futures, which I'm sure he's going to explain more of that later on as well. And he helps leaders navigate the future and unlock their superpowers to use and thrive with AI. So I hope I have done you justice around the introduction, Ben.
Okay, that's one hell of an intro. We're gonna have to edit that one down.
Go. Please feel free to take it away, mate. Go for it.
Amazing. Thanks so much for having me, Kurt. Let me just see if I can fix this sort of technical issue. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Let me know if that works. Okay, there you go. Brilliant. So yeah, I ask myself sometimes, how did I end up giving this talk, right? That's I'm a slightly unlikely person to be talking today about APRA, because I have worked at a lot of banks over the years, but I never thought of myself as someone who knew anything about APRA regulation. In fact, I still don't consider myself an expert. So you're going to have to take what I say about the law with a pinch of salt. I'm not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice. But what has really happened is, I guess, over the last couple of years, I've become obsessed with AI and generative AI in particular. And these days, I've been working with, people I've worked with in the past. In my previous existence as a not very technical consultant, and now everything I'm doing is quite technical. And as in, I'm back in the code. I've fallen in love with engineering again as a result of the generative AI, and so I'm doing this kind of advice role a lot. And my clients recently have been bringing me in and being like, Ben, Gen AI, so that's scary and fearful and bad, right? We shouldn't use that at a bank, should we? And I'm like, what? No, of course you should. What are you talking about? Like, this is amazing. This is changing the world. Why aren't you using it? Tell me more. Like CTOs, I'm often talking to the CTO, and one of my CTO friends was like, oh, but we're APRA regulated. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so I had to like learn what that meant to try to understand why my clients at banks were not using AI very much, at least some of them, right? So we were just speaking to Kevin earlier. He works at a bank, like Combank. They use a lot of generative AI. So some banks are doing really great. Other financial institutions maybe a little bit less on the front foot. And today I want to talk about some of the blocks that I've heard from people about what stops them from using generative AI at work, and how I've solved it for at least a couple of folks. And maybe this will help you unblock and unlock your organization if you're running into these kinds of problems. So hopefully it's of interest, and please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions as we go. So let's start off to get to know you a little bit better. We've spoken to you already. There's like 9 of us here. Let's just do a quick survey. I want to know what your biggest challenge is in terms of using Gen AI in this kind of APRA world. Like, have you run into any problems, or is it like smooth sailing? Any issues that you've run into? I'd love to know what your current level of confidence in Gen AI is, particularly in terms of using it at work. I'd love to know, like, what access level do you have? Are you banned from it, or have you got permission? And lastly, like what level of policies do you have in place? So grab your phone if that's at hand, and point the camera at the QR code, and then you should just be able to click the link, and that should take you straight into a survey with those questions, right? So let's do them live. So we'll start with the first question. What's your biggest challenge? Let's all do that together. So let me bring up your answers to that question. Once you've logged in, give you a second to do that. You can also go to menti.com on your laptop and type in this number, 88909778. That also works, and that number will be at the top of the screen. So yeah, just jump in. What do you think is the biggest challenge? So I'll add one. One of the ones I had was, no policy in place, so can't use it. Yeah, there was like, basically we didn't really think we could use it because, we just thought it wasn't permitted, I guess. Let's see if I can get that. Okay, so that was me, no policy in place, so can't use it. Security concerns, right? So this sense of security policy saying, what if we use something and the data gets out, right? That's like a classic one. Customer data leaks, yeah, absolutely, big one. Lots of blockers, right? Like really slow. I think even if you can do it, the amount of effort and time it takes to get there, definitely a challenge. I agree, right? And this sense of like fear and risk. Code's 88909778. It's at the top of the screen, hopefully. Menti.com, menti.com, code 88909778. So this kind of idea, this sense that, leaders are maybe a little bit conservative. Yeah, that's yeah, absolutely an issue. Let me I'm going to stop sharing because my screen is not doing what I want it to do. Brilliant. Can you see my screen now? Yeah, good. I think they're coming in now. Okay, so tough to have a single source of truth. Who was that? I don't quite understand that one. So what's that one about? Maybe unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Yeah, so hey guys, if you don't feel comfortable, feel free to put it in the chat. Yeah, just
Who said tough to have a single source of truth? Just wanted to understand that one. Right, okay. Right, yes, of course. Accuracy, right, yeah, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, if it isn't going to give me the same answer, is it usable? Which is similar to this one about like, yeah, this sort of customer facing, right, that's really scary for banks, and we'll talk about why in a moment. Like, okay, I could maybe use it internally, maybe a little bit, but what happens if we want to put it in front of the customer? I'll talk about why that's like such a terrifying prospect for most banks. So I asked you to rate some questions here. Basically, how confident do you feel using generative AI at work, right? And so we've got, I think, 1 and 2 there, average of 3.3. So we've got 3 responses so far. So maybe move on to the second question. Click next. Get a few more of those answers in. There we go. That's coming through. 1, 2, 3, 4 of you have answered. Wow, real spread there. We have adequate access to generative AI tools and platforms, right? So we've got people at every point on the spectrum there. Everything from like strongly disagree all the way up to strongly agree. So what an audience, right? Like, and we've got some people who feel like, yeah, like confident, people feeling mostly confident, but some people pretty lack of confidence using it. And positive impacts all over the place again, strongly disagree to a couple of people strongly agree, right? So wow. Goes to show you, if most of it, if the like 10 or so of us, 9 of us are from financial institutions, the level of maturity, the level of success is all over the place here. That's really fascinating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if does anyone want more time? Otherwise, we'll keep going. And then one of the questions was like, what's your policy on Gen AI tools? Not sure, no policy. I ran into that before. Ban all Gen AI tools. I'm surprised we don't have a few of those today. If you talk to a big enough audience, you'll get some people where they just said, no, you can't use it. Absolutely can't use it. And then it looks like most people are in the either like not allowed to use it because we don't have a policy, or yeah, we've got some. Interested to hear, are you in an APRA-regulated environment? The person who had access to all tools? Just wanted to ask that. Who had the most permissive policy here?
very impressive.
Very impressive, whoever it is. Are you willing to out yourself to say who it is? Okay. Feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to unmute. Yeah, okay. So one of the questions is about like, what tools or platforms do you have access to at work? And yeah, Copilot, 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 and Vectra, Google, Gemini, inbuilt tools. So Vectra, obviously, people. It looks like 100% of you have Copilot. That's amazing. Wow, fantastic. Okay, good to know. So thank you for that. Thank you for that sort of survey input. That's really helpful context, and absolutely, yeah, relevant to the questions we want to talk today. So this slow approval thing is kind of where we're kind of coming from here. Like the problem I have is if I go into a bank and they say, hey, let's introduce generative AI to your team, there's some hurdles. So let's understand those hurdles. I think of them in two main problems. You got a security problem and you have this APRA compliance problem. Let's talk about the security problem first. So this is where maybe if you work at a bank, your laptop is locked down, you can't install software, and you can't even visit all of the internet. Or even if you were allowed to, it would be against security policy. Now, that's there for a good reason, right? Like, think of all the phishing sites, the malware, the data theft, the threats that could steal data, your customer data, your credentials, your banking database from somehow your network. Imagine the damage to your brand, your business, if data was stolen. And that's the reason why security policies are so draconian, and why the safest option, if imagine you're the bank, you cannot let that data go free. You cannot be hacked. What's the most obvious way to prevent that? Well, let's just turn off all internet access to anything except the ones we allow. Therefore, if someone clicks a link that's a bit dodgy, looks a bit like a valid link, like Microsoft with an O in it, and they click login and it looks like a Microsoft login, and they put their CEO's password in and they hit login, and then, wow, that's not good, right? So obviously 2FA helps with that, but one way they help is they lock down URLs, so you can't even visit chatgpt.com. So that's one reason why we need a way to get around this problem. I've got my work laptop. How do I use Gen AI at work if it won't even let me visit the website? So I've got a solution for you, which is quite interesting. But another factor to talk about is data protection, particularly in terms of what you mentioned in the survey. What if someone what if we leak our private data when we're using like customer data? What if that gets sent to America, the US, and we lose it? And so that's the other kind of thing. And so I wrote this blog article a while ago about there's an old saying in tech: if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. And I want to give you an example of this, right? So there's two obvious examples. One of them would be chatgpt.com. Another one is aistudio.google.com. Both of them offer free services, right? You can come into aistudio.google and Google will happily let you type anything you want in here. Like, here is a CSV of private customer data. You'd never use that for training future models, would you? And so what's interesting about this is it's not really clear whether or not Google would use this data that I'm sending to train models on, right? So that's a really big concern that people have. And I dug into this, right? And I wrote a whole blog about it. And interestingly, I was wrong. Like, this is such a difficult bit to get right that I wrote a whole blog on this topic and I still got it wrong. Here's the blog I wrote about it. I was like, oh yeah. So if you're in Google Studio and you're trying to figure out, is my data safe? You go into settings, you go into plan information, and you end up on this page, which has information of like, there's two kind of like, pay for it or get it for free. And the really interesting thing is this: is the data used by Google for like improving their product, right? And at this point, if you're a bank, you're like, well, it's really important to know what you do with our data. And over here it says, like, if you pay for it, then no, we won't use your data. Well, that's good. That sounds safer. But then I looked so I set up a plan that was paid, and I was like, this is good, right? Like, now I can use private data in AI Studio. And I was wrong, right? After hours of research, I got this wrong, because it turns out there's a line in the terms and conditions about AI Studio in particular. And I don't even know if I can find it here, but suffice it to say, somewhere in the Gemini terms and conditions, I just want to show you how sorry, I should have prepared this, but like, if you look for the Gemini terms and conditions, here they are. This is the legal document that you are agreeing to. Here it is. No, there it is. Okay, so this sentence here says that like paid services, we won't train the data, as opposed to something that's offered for free, like direct interactions with Google AI Studio or unpaid quota. And like, what's going on here is that Google are giving you away their AI for free. They don't tell you they're giving it to you for free. And as a result, your data is not safe. I couldn't believe this was true. So this is the second reason why your risk officer and your security officer are saying, no, you can't use Google AI Studio. You're banned. You have to apply for permission, because these terms and conditions are really sneaky. And there are ways around it, but if you're not paying for and I've written down some of them in my blog if you're interested. I've shared a link to that if you want to, if this is a particular interest to you. But yeah, there's reasons why people are really scared of giving access. And so that was security, right? So we had data problem, we had the like network access to tools problem. The other problem you've got is APRA compliance. So they're in the business of like ensuring that no matter what happens, the bank doesn't go down, right? We can always get our money out of the bank. That's kind of the APRA worldview, as far as I can tell. And they do this through lots of mandatory procedures, through like policies. And so your bank will, or your super fund or your insurer will, as you probably well know, will have like all of these like crazy policies and procedures, like change control, approvals, monitoring. These risk officer requires you to do risk assessments, and this goes all the way up to the board of directors. So it can be a huge like kerfuffle to comply with all of these procedures. So I wanted to give you an idea. If you've never thought about what would it take to introduce generative AI into a bank, what APRA is really looking for. And the good news is, the best news is that you can think of it as stuff APRA cares about and stuff APRA doesn't care about. And there's this whole bucket of things that are considered non-material or non-critical, and things that are not material or not critical, APRA doesn't care. You don't even have to notify them. You don't even have to tell them. If you deem introduction of generative AI in a particular use case to be non-critical or non-material, and you probably might have a conversation with your risk officer about that. But if you're a product manager or an engineer or a leader and you want to just get started with some of this stuff, this is the first step. Find a use that is not business critical, and we'll talk about what we mean by that. The law credential standard says it's sort of self-referential. It's not material if it wouldn't have a direct material adverse impact upon your customers or the reputation of your bank. So I thought that was a bit weird. It's a bit self-referential. I'm not an expert at APRA, but first look at this regulation was like, it's not critical if it's not critical. Thanks, APRA. Anyway, they do go on to give some more details. But if it is going to be part of your critical business, you need to provide a whole bunch of assurances to APRA that if generative AI is being used for what is considered critical operations, then you need to do the full Monty, right? The full production safe version of generative AI. And that looks like having done the materiality assessment, you've done a due diligence on the provider, you've got business continuity plans. If the provider goes down, you have an alternative. You have a way of vetting the people involved. You have owners signed up to be on the hook if it goes wrong. You have these outsourcing and offshoring risk assessments. You have contracts that have to have all kinds of interesting things in them about how the data is handled, how APRA gets physical and digital access to their records. You literally have to prove to APRA that, you know, APRA can go and visit the data center and see the data to prove that you're not, you know, if they need to audit you. It's absolutely crazy what the law says. And they want you to make a big list of every service provider involved in every critical operation and who in your business is accountable for it, and monitoring it. So to me, summing all that up, they just really care about your operational resilience. Like, never go down. You cannot rely on some external provider without a plan of alternative providers, or if it goes down or if it stops working, and they want ownership and accountability. And this is all new. This is the new coming into place in a year. June 2025, the new CS 230 regulation comes in. So your risk officers are right now thinking about, how do I get my bank ready for next financial year? Because this is what is required from APRA next financial year. Okay, so for Gen AI, what we're interested in is, when we're starting, picking non-critical use cases. So I'm just going to give you an idea of what the critical ones are, so you can sort of avoid these. So your risk officer goes, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, don't care. Okay, so don't do it for processing people's payments, or taking people's money, or settling transactions, or assessing people's credit, or liquidity management, or brokering. See how these are obviously core critical operations. If you use Gen AI, a service provider, in one of these sections, expect to go through that full rigmarole I just went through. Same for claims, underwriting, claims management. If you're an insurer, obviously the insurance stuff is critical. If you're a super fund, managing the funds is considered critical, pretty obvious. This one is going to get you. So most customers want to put generative AI in front of their customers. And this is where you're going to need to work with your risk team to finagle a way to declare that these customer inquiries are not critical, but these customer inquiries are critical. So what APRA is saying is, like, people being able to ring you up and complain about their money, or get access to their money, that's business critical. Having a chatbot on your website, probably you could argue that it's not business critical, but because it's a prescribed customer inquiry, APRA will require you internally to make an assessment to say that this is a non-material use of generative AI. And all systems that support critical operations, so that's all your infrastructure, all your service providers involved in those critical operations. And also, weirdly, I think this is new for this year, for next year, risk management, all your core technology services, and all your audit processes are now considered critical operations. I don't believe they were last time. Could be wrong on that. So here's the trick. You can take one of those ones I've just listed. If you're just like, oh no, Ben just said I can't do it, I can't use generative AI in that really cool thing I wanted to use. What you can do is use it in a way by internally declaring it as non-critical. So if you determine that a business operation that has been told to you by APRA is not critical, the reasons need to be written down, need to be signed off by a board member probably, or accountable person like a CTO, CFO, COO. And as long as you review that document every year to say, no, it's still not critical. It's not necessary for you to give it to APRA. APRA don't care. It's a non-material business service. Off you go, knock yourself out. Don't talk to me. I'm the regulator. I only care about your operational resilience. I don't care about your testing and stuff like that. The great news is that for learning and experimentation, for test environments, for anything that isn't on the critical path, you don't need to talk to APRA, which is so good. Really, really, really good. Yeah, and so nature of inquiry, right? Like, yeah, like making a payment is going to feel much more critical. And some of this is about, like, is it clear that the customer has another way to do it? I'm assuming. I mean, talk to an expert about this. But to Kurt's question, for customer inquiries, how would you carve out the non-material section? I think your risk officer can help you with that. They're really familiar with these regulations. So I've just painted the pretty bleak picture, I think. I've talked about all these security problems, all of the law that your bank and your super fund have to comply with. How do we solve all this security and compliance? And so here's one way I did for real. I'm going to show it to you. So you can take this and use it, or ask me to come and do it for you. So the solution I came up with is the concept of an AI learning lab, an explicitly non-production environment where everyone can do proof of concepts, build generative AI solutions, show them to anyone, even customers. You can put them on the website as long as it's clear that they are non-production use cases that are for learning only, right? Obviously, if you tell a customer, you have to worry about reputational damage. That APRA does care about that. But internal use cases, as you've discovered, completely fine. Also, non-production use cases, completely fine. But even for but how do you do it then? Your laptop's locked down. There's this risk of data leaking. You still have all these concerns, the compliance concerns. So how do we solve all of that? So I want to do a demo of how I solved it for a client. So what I'm going to show you is basically I set up a lab workspace here using Microsoft's Azure, and what I did is I've created basically a virtual machine, a virtualized environment, so anyone can go to this URL, and it allows them using an account on my learning lab, which isn't in the bank's environment. So this is a completely isolated environment. And when the user connects to it, they can connect to it here on a browser. Basically, we're logging into a machine on the internet that has no access to your bank's network, and it has no access to any of your data. It's completely isolated, right? So this is the first step. Like, have an environment that lets you use generative AI that is completely isolated from your business. This may not be new news for techies in this, but this is a really interesting unlock. Imagine being able to give your CEO access to an environment where it's safe for them to play with technology, and there's no way they can break the bank. There's no way their passwords can leak out. It's just like a completely isolated environment for learning. I also then go and set it up so it's got lots of really interesting resources. So I've collected a lot of AI resources as part of teaching people how to use it. And so this is just a bookmark. And so, for example, when people are exploring, they can explore Copilot. If they've never seen the amazing ad from Microsoft, you can show it to them. This is just YouTube, right? So sometimes YouTube is blocked. Here they can access YouTube because this machine has access to the internet, but it's completely isolated from your bank. Do you see what we're doing there? Hopefully that's clear. So you can give someone access to all the tools, including things like ChatGPT. And what's interesting is that when you teach people to use this, you teach them that they cannot go and grab files off their computer. So if I try to load a file on here, none of my files are on the drive here. So if I try to upload an attachment, I'm not going to see any of my confidential business information because the documents folder is literally empty. It's a virtual machine. It has no confidential data on it. So they're going to have to go out of their way to upload confidential information into ChatGPT, which means it's actually a lot safer for them to use ChatGPT. Not that we recommend the free version of ChatGPT for any actual banking work, but that's a conversation. Read my blog if you want to know why. But yeah, so I love being able to give people access to lots of tools. And one of the tools that I normally preload is something that I built for training purposes, right? So I just wanted to show that as an example. Let me share this so you can hear it. I think I have to press a special button to do that. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. I'm going to start this session. Basically, this is a tool for showing non-technical people how AI works. And yeah, I can't, it basically searches the website of the client. So what I normally do is I set it up so it uses a powerful large language model to search the client's website. and then I can just talk to it. For example, I can say, this searches New21's website, and I can be something like, I don't know if it's going to work actually. I can't talk to it here, but I can type here. Yeah, tell me about the AI for Leaders course. Hit send. And what it's going to do is it's going to demonstrate that it's able to retrieve information from their website, turn it into meaningful text, tell the client about themselves, which is quite engaging, right? And so she thinks for a little bit because she's doing a behind the scenes a web search, and then she's turning that into like meaningful text based on the query.
So you're interested in the AI for Leaders course by New21. That's a fantastic choice. From what I've found, this course is specifically designed to empower business leaders and professionals with cutting-edge AI knowledge and practical skills. It's all about augmenting human.
So you can go and play with that if you want. I can send the link if that's of interest. I think she only allows free users at the moment on the trial key. But the point here is that you could set up quite a lot of compelling software. In fact, I even installed on the virtual machine coding tools, so you can customize this with things that aren't allowed at your bank. So I installed Cursor, very fancy AI editor here. I installed it in the VM, so users have immediate access to a very cool tool. For example, this one you might say, build a landing page for a Fintech Gen AI meetup group. Explain why people should join. The organizer is Kurt. And I hit generate. And now this uses magic behind the hood. And look at that. There we go. Here's our meetups webpage. So I'm showing non-technical people the power of generative HTML in this case. And I might do a couple of rounds of that to be like, now style it using Tailwind and make it look great. So you can see how this isn't something that a typical bank would just allow off the cuff. So I feel like this is unlocking a kind of exploration environment that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, I think. I don't know if that's going to work. Are you done? Okay, so the ticks are a bit big, and we would go on and refine that and fix the bugs and so on. But hopefully you get the idea, right? Like, so this environment has a lot of opportunities for a user to explore many different use cases very, very quickly without being kind of constrained by policy or data loss. So, for example, one of the things that's quite fun to do is upload public data only, like extracts from the website, into Azure's AI Studio, for example. If you haven't played with that, it's got a whole playground, and you can teach technical teams how to actually do retrieval augmented generation by just like, going through the process of adding a data source and then being able to chat with it, right? So that's Microsoft's kind of environment for playing around with generative AI. So really good educational tool. You can even build some systems. You can deploy them to a really simple web app all quite quickly, all in this proof of concept environment. So I find that quite good for getting people off the ground. So that's the kind of setup I do. So I also want to explain how is the cookie made, right? Like what's the secret? How do we actually like create something like this? So I'm gonna give away some of the tricks and then like hand over to you guys to answer questions if you've got any. So here's kind of like the trick. So the way this works, if you're interested in doing it yourself, is either obviously I can do it for you, but if you want to do it yourself, you need to basically set up all your Azure stuff, your virtual machines, then go in and set up the things you want people to play with. For example, you might create an AI Studio hub, create a project for people, load in some models for them to play with, set up the chat playground so that they can use it, and install things like Cursor and make sure you've turned on things like privacy mode, so the code doesn't get leaked. And what you've done here is you've basically unlocked a learning and experimentation environment, which is completely safe, is non-material. You instruct people to use public data only. Do not upload any files from your customer database. And it's secured using Active Directory, so probably using the same login system that they're currently using to get access to the VM, so but on a completely separate tenant. So that's been really successful. I've used that for real with clients. They've been able to do it in workshops or after the workshop, go away and use it as a learning environment. And it's really helped their security officers and their risk officers and their executives feel like they are complying with APRA's regulations in terms of data breach, misuse. It's giving access which otherwise couldn't be given, and it's sort of getting people ready in the early stages for using generative AI, which I think has been really cool. And yeah, so that's an Australian super fund that I've been working with. They've used it for real, and their security team are pretty happy with it. So yeah, like I think this is absolutely a good way to go, and it's all about sort of balancing how innovative you are, how much risk tolerance you take on, with how much innovation you're able to, how fast you're able to go. This might be an unlock for you, and so hopefully that was interesting, right? So if you want to do it yourself, we're doing it tomorrow, probably a bit late, but if you're free tomorrow, I've got like 1, maybe 2 slots left in New 21's AI for Leaders workshop, or just go to meetthefuture.ai with a dash and let's have a chat. Happy to have a call with anyone to talk you through it. Maybe I can come and set it up for your org. Super happy, love teaching this stuff. So hopefully that was just a taste, and like got you thinking about how to get around some of this regulation in a safe way. So thanks very much for having me. I've got lots more stuff about APRA, but that's all only if people have questions about it. Like, yeah, so great. Awesome. I think that's enough for a starting point before we get into questions.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, so Ben, I think you definitely enlightened us a lot on both the APRA side. I think the APRA, that regulatory side of which is really eye-opening, but more importantly, the stuff actually you created or your organization created about that safe, you can call like a playground and everything. Even for me personally, in my organization currently, we don't do a lot of this stuff, but I think just being able to having that you can call a bit of like psychological safety or whatever, it's like mental safety of knowing we can really just play around and just because that's basically what triggers innovation, right? You've got to allow people to play and then sparks ideas and then things would happen. So yeah, I really see this thing's going to work for a lot of enterprise. So that's amazing. Just open up to the floor. Questions, feel free to put in the chat or unmute yourself to asking questions, whatever is easier for you guys. It's very flexible. So I just want to check in, Ali, Renan, Kevin, Rajan, Jason, Nadal. Do you guys have any questions for Ben? Otherwise, I would have some questions.
Yep, Nadal, go for it.
Yep.
Maybe unmute yourself if you're happy to.
Righto, can you guys hear me well?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, awesome. Pleasure to speak to you. Very nice presentation. Well, the reason why this gauged my interest is we've been doing a lot of work in Saudi Arabia and in the UAE, and we've found like there's been a lot of exceptions from government bodies to let us in the door, but that's really built on relationships. Whereas in Australia, we've found that it's extremely restrictive. So I find myself usually late hours doing work in Saudi Arabia just because it's more adoption. Do you see the tides turning here, or what would it take to turn the tides? Because I'd love to operate in Australia at some stage.
I think it really depends on who you're talking to. Like, so we have people from CommBank here, Westpac also, big Gen AI programs, quite successfully adopting and they're all doing it very carefully, right? As their risk officers and their board are telling them, hey, APRA tells us under no circumstances can you put any critical operation at risk. And you have to just fully have perfect production-ready solutions if it's critical business operation. Or we need an alternative approach where it only uses AI sometimes, and then as soon as that fails, it fails over to a different process, right? So you just need these bulletproof, unbreakable banks, basically. And so what we see is the big companies absolutely know they must get on the front foot with this technology. So there's a lot of desire to not get left behind. And what I see is this idea that let's start safe internally, and let's use that as a way to find our feet, and also, that gives us time to then prepare our case for, let's say, a real critical business system where, let's say, claims processing can be 2 times faster or 2 times better if we use generative AI in the operational part, and we're going to put it in our core workflow where all claims are processed using AI in the middle. You just go through your normal change control, which has got the full, okay, we're using a new vendor and a production system. So it's doable, but I can see why you don't want to commit to doing all that work unless you're really sure it's the right tool for the job, which is why I think all this proof of concept work is so valuable. Because once you've proven it in a non-critical path, then it's totally worth investing the month or 2 of legal and procurement and risk work, and the board have to get involved, and they send stuff, they upload documents to the APRA's website, and then they do a guidance thing, and then there's all these steps, and it is, I think, psychologically, just a lot of work. You just wouldn't do it unless you've already found a use case that is both valuable and critical. Does that make sense?
Well, Kurt, it does, but it doesn't, because when nations like Saudi Arabia or the UAE or even Turkey that we're dealing with find this as a competitive advantage, and it's endorsed by the ministers and by the heads of state, why are we not seeing that? What's missing here? Why are we so delayed? It's quite alarming, right? To this, I mean, I'm an Australian. I'm a patriot, right? I want to see my nation see Gen AI adopted as a competitive advantage, whereas others are doing it in anger. I just think we're missing out because we get too caught on governance and these sort of the hype, or what. It's not all entirely hype, but it is at the same time. It's a hindrance. End of the day, it's a data platform. Providing some form of knowledge or intelligence or automation or a bit of both. But that's my view on it, and I'm very passionate about it. But thanks for the presentation today. It's very
thanks for coming. Have you enjoyed it? Yeah, good.
Cool. Any other questions? Ali, Kevin, Renan? I mean, like, Ali, you work in insurance. Any sort of angle from an insurance perspective?
No, I was just thinking about what Nidal was saying. I think it's also a branding issue, right? If this technology wasn't called AI, people wouldn't care about it as much as it is. So I think that's sort of part of it. Yeah, because AI brings up all the scary things about artificial intelligence, right? So maybe it's a branding issue.
That could be a reason. Yeah, actually, good reason. I think also Rajan got a question in the chat. I understand we have to start using Gen AI with the non-critical process first, but how can we use all the capabilities of Gen AI without using it for critical processes? Good question.
Yeah. I mean, I think APRA is not saying don't use it for these critical processes, but don't make it on the critical path. Does that make sense? As in, it can't risk the bank being able to do anything critical, as an example, if that makes sense, Raja. So one way that I've seen a client use it in a critical process, like payments processing or something, is the finance team that process stuff might use optical character recognition, OCR, like a vision model, to understand documents that are on the critical path. But if that system fails, the standard flow is still there, right? It's built in such a way that it doesn't impact the critical business operation of payments or whatever it is, right? So like the technology is being trialed in a non-production environment, but when it does go to production, it's still not going to be on the critical path. It'll be designed in such a way that it's a alternative path. And those kinds of distinctions become quite important when you're dealing with APRA, I think. Because you can say, look, it's not on the critical path. It's like an adjunct to. It just makes our operators a bit more efficient. It's a productivity thing, not a capability thing. I think that I'm thinking, right? Does that answer the question, Raja? So I think you could use most of the capabilities in most of the places in a non-production case, and then start to find a way to switch it on sometimes, and always have a backup plan, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, just extending on that, because I've seen that in the software space a lot of times, is that you do a POC, right? I mean, because POC is relatively easy to do and to achieve, and the board might be really pleased with it. But having a successful POC version of the product, comparing to a bulletproof production version, just in terms of the level of investment to really creating the two, will be having a very different. So I guess coming to this, having you can call production or non-critical sort of a version of the Gen AI application or whatever things we build in terms of investment, whether it's technology, resource, and everything, comparing to having the critical one, I think that could be drastically different. I don't know whether the bank, although they might have the confidence after using that in the non-critical environment and thinking, hey, it all looks good, we're ready, but are they really thought about the level of potential investment they're going to fork out when it comes to the critical? You know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen that from your previous engagement. Has that been a problem, or do you even think that's a problem for the bank if they do decide to go down this kind of a non-critical to critical path? Is that going to be a...
Yeah, it's funny, right? We see a lot of proof of concepts in the market, even in Australia, but fewer examples of in production use cases. I don't know, it feels like that shift from proof of concept to production has not been super commonly successful. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that changes over time. I think as we see more production use cases, that'll put more pressure on other people to push things into production. And when we see more use cases being really successful, that drives the investment. So yeah, investment is still pretty slow at the moment in Australia, I think. I have a sense that we're still being a bit careful fiscally with most of our capital allocation. And so as a result, maybe that might change over time, and then that'll unlock a flood of investment. It seems like an obvious place to invest, but if you have this choice of invest or not invest, I guess there's lots of arguments for going slowly, taking it one step at a time. So yeah.
That actually led to what Nadal was talking about, the situation in Turkey or in the other regions that he's more familiar with, right? Nadal was just wondering, given Australia, I think it sounds to me this is actually one of the key reasons blocking us from doing more investment, right? In those regions you're more familiar with, how about their regulators? Are they a bit more relaxed, allowing this kind of a Gen AI stuff going to production quicker, even giving a bit of a more room to fail? How's that played out in the UAEs or in those regions? Do you know?
Yeah, Nadal.
You're on mute there, Nadal.
I didn't know the question was towards me.
Apologies.
It's more for everyone else. But look, in terms of what we're finding is, because it's endorsed by governments, we're finding that the regulators are being a little bit more relaxed. As a matter of fact, they're very inviting. Last week we were at the biggest AI forum in the Middle East called GAIN. And actually the Minister of Communications and IT stood up and endorsed us as a small company of 40 people, saying, if you want, hallucination-free large language models, speak to Victara. And we're like, oh, wow, massive endorsement. Thinking about when the next time an Australian government minister is going to get up and speak so eloquently, and understanding about, Gen AI platforms the way me and you understand, is probably a long way from now. So I think everyone's invested through education, through knowing, and they're really inviting vendors to be invested in the area. For instance, they're putting a Google data center for the first time in there, and it's all to do with speeding up Gen AI. But look, for the first time in my life, I'm Arabic native. I know that sort of use the word a non-democratic nations governed by one or two people has come to an advantage because their leader has said, "You're doing it," so everyone's doing it. We don't have that over here.
There's a little bit of that in that government thing that's going on at the moment, where every government department, I believe, had to have a AI officer or something. I haven't looked it up recently, but Australia there is some regulatory moves to force government services down that path, to have a policy and to have an accountable person and all of that kind of stuff. So that's interesting. I don't know if that's the same as encouraging it. It sounds like just more regulation the way it comes across to me. It's like an Australian version of encouraging stuff. It's like you must have a nominated person.
Yeah, nominated person is one thing, but their position is they're disappointed at the slow adoption level to date. And what can we do to accelerate this? I'll give you an example. Procurement is a problem. They're used to multi-million-dollar deals, and Gen AI is not always that expensive. So we have to explain to them that, hey, you don't necessarily have to spend millions of dollars for this. This could be easy. We spoke about proof of values or proof of concepts, right? That could be in the $100,000 mark and less. They're not used to these. They're used to big numbers. And as I said, procurement it takes months to get in for startups, for small. So they want to sort of eliminate that. And then obviously they want to start with the use cases that are very well proven. So we find a lot of it is to do with basically AI assistance. In other words, asking questions, getting answers. So I think if you wanted to, I think someone said that take away the AI thing out of it. If you think of Gen AI in the context of GBT, ask a question, get an answer, or searchability, that's big. That's a big hit.
That's pretty cool. Awesome. I think just given interest of time, I think we're over the time. I know it's quite late on a Tuesday night. Thank you, Ben. Really, really appreciate your time. I think this has been recorded. I'll share the recording with you guys soon after. Feel free to share that in other social medias and stuff. And also, thanks for everyone for coming along tonight. And Nido is going to be one of our upcoming guest speakers in one of the upcoming episodes, so look out for that. Yeah, so this has been amazing. And yeah, so maybe Ben, down the track when actually there's one like sort of last question I forgot to ask you earlier. I think you did mention about the upcoming APRA sort of AI governance related sort of like regulation changes coming up, right? Is that sort of are they trying to tightening this up, or what's sort of the directions APRA is taking on this? Do you have some?
Yeah, so I think generally speaking, it's becoming more positive, right? Like there's this whole new thing called CPS 230, which is what's keeping your risk officer up at night. And basically it replaces 3 prudential standards into 1, slightly stricter service provider management, more rigorous business continuity testing, stricter incident management, increased board and accountability, more focus on operational resilience. So that means that your risk team is like busy trying to assess all of these service providers and all of the critical operations to see if they have to do any more compliance work. But overall, if you look at the story arc, basically it's like becoming less. Like if you look at, they're pretty skeptical in 2015, 2018 started to talk about being a bit more open to using the cloud. And now you have this 230 enforced from the 1st of July, where they're not really saying as much about what you can and can't do, more saying, look, you need to go through all these procedures. And if you do them, like knock yourself out, right? They're not deliberately anti-cloud as long as you have a risk assessment process and business continuity around your processes. It's no longer like, oh, cloud's a scary thing and offshore is a scary thing, you shouldn't do it. It feels like more it's like, yeah, no, go for it, but like have all the rigorous controls in place so that you can take your money out of the ATM. That's kind of what they're thinking, right?
Got it. Does
that make sense? So,
yeah, it does.
They're there for good reasons.
Yeah, it does. Awesome. Yeah, so thank you guys. I really appreciate joining. So our next session is in 2 weeks time, same time, because I'm trying to run this every fortnightly. So next one is really fun as well. His name is Will. I think Will's going to share some of the career-related stuff. Actually, wait, hold on. I need to double check. I think it could be either Sherry or Will, but I'll be publishing the next events very shortly. Yeah, so look out for that. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Have a good night, and we'll see you in the next event.
Thanks for having me, Kurt.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Take care.